Okay, good morning and welcome to a new week, Yeshiva YouTube. Today we are learning just Daf It, Daf Yomi Shir, Kesubos Lamed Tet, number 39. Fabulous shir for you today. We're going to be talking all about the Kesuba, right? This Gemara is going to talk about that you have to, really, ideally, when you get married, you should give 10 Kesubas to your wife. The Medachtikim mitzvahs give 100 Kesubas to their wives. Joke. That's not what we're talking about. That's not true. You have one Kesubah to your wife. We're talking about the difference between mafuta and ones, right? Probably you've been wondering. There's an onus in the Torah, which you rape a woman, and mafuta, where you seduce her. I mean, if you seduce her, really, why are you responsible to pay for anything? Seducing, she sort of wants to be with you, right? You convince her. She says no, but if she means yes, she says yes, and she means no, whatever. She agreed. So why are you paying a knas in this case? We're going to find out. Obviously, the reason is because she's a young girl. She's only a nara. And she seduced, actually. Maybe they didn't want to be with the guy. Maybe she did. We don't know. And that's what we're going to talk about more in the Gemara and explain it more in Iyos Ben Sion kind of up in the next segment. So let's start the Gemara. Alamed Chedam Beis on the bottom, 38b on the bottom, 4 lines to the bottom. Milstab Shizalei Abaye Mibai Rava. Abaye said yesterday on the previous daf. I said on the share on Friday with yesterday's daf. Daf Lamed Ches. Abaye says that if you rape a girl and then she dies before Beis Din awards the knas to the father, you don't have to pay it. Abaye says she's dead. Avia Naira, Lola Avia Mesa. Rava wasn't sure about this. The boy Rava asked the following question: Is beggar b'kever or in beggar b'kever? Meaning she died, right? You raped her, she died as a nara. Now, after 6 months of nara, she becomes a bogeres. 6 months. So now the father came to Beis Din. He wants to get the 50 kesef, 50 shkolim from this man to pay to himself. Usually the father gets the knas. So what happened if the 6 months already elapsed before the Gemara din, before the Beis Din passes to give him? Do we consider her a bogeres? If she's a bogeres, right, then goes to her or goes to her son. We'll see. It doesn't go to the father anymore. So ish beggar bekever, any beggar bekever does once she's dead, because she turned into a bogeres once she's dead. Ish beggar bekever, no. If you hold her is beggar bekever, so it would belong to, and then they give a psak. Then after the bagros, after the 6 months, it would belong to her son. Heavy. Maybe there's no bagros, right? And Rava holds cholik on Abaye that she gets it as a nara, even though she's dead now, it goes to the father. So the Gemara has a fundamental question. The top of Aleph, is it possible that she should have a child, right? That should go to her son? What's the first possibility that it belongs to her son? Rav Bibi committed Rav Nachman. Rav Bibi taught in front of Rav Nachman. Shalosh nashim misham shows b'mok. 3 women are allowed to use condom or use a sponge or a vaginal cup or something like that in order to prevent pregnancy. Elohein, chtano muberes, a young girl, muberes, a woman who's pregnant, and if she's nursing, chtana shemet zaber b'tama. The reason chtana, we'll see how old the chtana is in a second, because she might become pregnant and die. She can't handle the fetus. Muberes shemet hasu brasandal. She's pregnant. Now, we know from science that she can't produce another child once she's pregnant. What the Gemara means over here, I'm not really sure what it means. Rashi seems to say that somehow you could conceive another child when you're pregnant, and therefore would smash the first child. I would say that maybe it's talking about the actual intercourse that's with them. That fundamentally, when you're being mishamish without a moch, it's more rough. The sex is more rough, so therefore the husband can smash the child. They're masham shemamok with protection. Maybe it's not as rough. I don't know. Maybe you have to do a survey about that. A Pew survey. Check in your local Pew statistics. Find out the answer to that. That's my explanation over here. Menika. The reason Menika, she uses a moch. She uses contraception. Shama tigmal is bana, because she might, if she's right, it's known, this is true, that after she becomes pregnant, if she's nursing, the milk is going to dry up pretty quickly, and she's going to have very little milk to give the newborn. Even though there is baby formula that you can give to them, I'm sure there was baby formula back then, also something, but it's not as effective. Nothing is as good as mother's milk. So it would tingmos menah, she's gonna have to stop nursing her baby, and therefore it would hurt her baby. Basic Tana, what's it Tana? 11-year-old to 12-year-old. 11-year-old girl. This is all the opinion of Meir. That if she's less than 11 years old, she's not going to conceive. If she's 11 years old, she'll conceive and she's going to die. If she's 12 years old, she'll conceive and have a child. There's no head there to use a condom or to use a sponge, a vaginal sponge. Rely on God. God will have mercy on you. Hashem watches people that are fools. So therefore, it's impossible for her to have a child, because if she's going to have the child as a bogeris, that means she became pregnant as a ktana. We said, according to Rameir explains that a ktana, 11-year-old who has a child who conceives, she's not going to be able to give birth to the child. She'll die. So it's only possible to have a child once you're to her nara. So she conceives when she's a nara, and she gave birth obviously when she was a nara. But she's a yarchem mikayal. Can you give her in 6 months? Amar Shmuel, and minaras lebag until she's chadashim. The Gemara says the shortest gestation period is 6 months plus. Right? It has to be mikutos, 6 months plus a little bit of the 7th month. So 6 months is not enough, right? At the end of exactly 6 months, Bagra sets in. Maybe there's nothing less than 6 months. Maybe you can have a Bagras which is longer than 6 months. Ella Kamar. It says Shmuel said Ella, only 6 months. I mean only 6 months, not more. Ella Haki Yami B'Baile. What Rav meant to ask is the following: Is bigger Bakever or Paka'av? Right? He wasn't saying if she turned to Bulgaris in her grave already, so therefore the son gets. There is no son, right? It just means that the father doesn't get it. Maybe there's no beggar in the kever. She remains a nara after she dies for however long, and therefore the father would always get it. Marba Rashi asked the question a little differently. Misa osa bagros, oena osa bagros. The fact that she dies, did that make her like she's a Bulgaris? Or eno osa bagros doesn't make her like a Bulgaris. I think Marba Rashi would also agree that there would be beggar bekever, meaning like Rava says that if you waited till the 6 months elapsed, so then even Marba Rashi would agree for sure she doesn't get it. The question is, if he tries to collect it right away after she dies, just the fact that she died is like she became a Bulgaris. The Gemara doesn't have an answer to Rava or seemingly to Marba Rashi's Shaila. Let's say he raped her, and then she became engaged afterward to another man. So is he pater from paying the knas to the father? Doesn't say Lavia lo arusa shel lo arasa, that she wasn't previously engaged. She's engaged. Who cares, right? He has to pay the father. Lo tamaya chadatanya ba'alev v'nises la'atzma. The Brisa says if he raped her and then she got married, right? So who gets the knas? She gets it herself. Miksiv nasan lavia nara shel lo nisua, right? Does it say that, right? So you see the fact that she gets married goes to herself. Therefore, Eris maybe she should go to herself also. Whole bagras and mishus av and isul mitzim mishus av ma bagras balev bagra la'atzma af nesiun balev and isul la'atzma. Bagras is comparable to getting married, fully married, not just engaged, but also to be taken under a canopy. So therefore, it goes to herself. El arusa mikam afki mishus av. The fact that she got engaged, who cares? She's not married yet. She's not married yet. The father would still get the knas. The first mission, the last paragraph of Dharam says that she's just engaged, right? When it comes to annulling her vows, right? It's a joint venture between the father and the aris, meaning the person, the fiance. I say a boy fiance, I don't know. The fiance, the aris, and the father. So she still, as I explained before in the previous Eden Shiurim, she's shelo of the aris, but she's still bershus of the father. She's still in his possession. She hasn't left her house yet. She's still living at his house. So therefore, the father, just like he maintains rights for Afaras and Darim, he would also maintain the rights for the Knas. Like the Mishnah says, Amafata no saying Shlosha Dvarim, the owners are, but Amafata has to give 3 payments out. The owner, we always think just 1 payment of Knas. So there's more things, the Mishnah says. 3 things. The owners are, but the owners 4. Amafata no saying Boshes of Pagam Knas. Boshes, she's embarrassed. The Gemara will explain what this means exactly, but generally it means she's embarrassed that she has to live with the fact that people are going to talk about her, that she was raped or that she was seduced. Upagam. It also ruins her reputation, her familiar reputation. It's going to ruin not just her reputation, but her whole family's reputation. They have a girl who's promiscuous, Viknas. Viknas, most of all, onus gives something else. He causes her pain. We'll see whether that's physical or emotional pain. Mabe knows the mafut. The onus knows him as asar. Mfata eno knows him as asar. The onus gives it sar. Mfut doesn't give it sar. Onus, what else is the difference? The onus knows him miyad. The onus, right when he rapes her, he's chayav to give it to her. Mfata l'kshiyotzi. Mfata only gives it to her. L'kshiyotzi, we'll see, this means when he decides not to marry her. The onus has to get married, we'll see in a second. Mfata doesn't have to get married. Mfata, when he decides he doesn't want to get married to her, then he has to give her the knas. The onus, or the father, the knas. The onus shoteh batzit. The onus is forced. The Torah says, your man is a woman, you're forced to get married to her. But since kofi to get married, mfata l'kshiyotzi. Sorry, mavada in ratza l'hotzi motzi. Mfata, if he wants to not get married, he can not get married. And also, if he got married, he's allowed to divorce her, right? The onus has to get married to her, and also not lo yigarsha kol yamav. He can't divorce her his whole life. What does it mean? I feel hichigeres, even if she's lame, she is missing a leg, or it's hard for her to walk. I feel suma, she's blind. I feel mukashchin. I don't know why you raped the girl if she's missing a leg or she's blind. Maybe she's blind, I can understand. Mufugashchin, she has a lot of pimples on her face. Nimsa, so you have to stay married to her. You have to marry her. You can't get divorced the rest of your life. Nimsa about var erva, Yisrael. Let's say she committed adultery at one point, or she's not ruvul about Yisrael. She's a mamzeres or an asina. You can't marry her. Ain't a rasha b'kaima. In that case, you don't have to marry her. Shneimar v'lo isha haruyalo. Tiyel isha has to be someone fit to be married to. If she's not fit to be married to, so then there's no mitzvah in the Torah to marry her, and you can't divorce her. You just get rid of her. Where it says sar demai, what sar? We said onus pays an additional fee for causing her pain. What pain was it? Amar avu de Shmuel, that doesn't exist by mafuta when you seduce her. Amar avu de Shmuel sar shechapta gabe karka. When you're mani, when you rape a woman, you forcibly throw her on the ground, so she gets pain, physical pain, from being thrown on the ground. Let's say, it says that onus in the Mishnah always pays for the sar. Let's say he had a nice some silk clothing, or he had a nice mattress, so he forced her onto it. She doesn't get pain by throwing her on the ground. He threw her on silk. Silk is actually pleasurable to be on. Hachanami the potter, it would be potter. You'll say it's actually potter. By the time Shimon Yehuda Omer, Shimon actually argues. He argues on a Mishnah. He says doesn't pay the sar. Shasofa, top of the reason onus doesn't pay according to Rabbi Shimon for tsar is because even though now he caused her pain, he raped her, but he's going to be with her, he's going to be married to her, right? Onus, you have to marry her, so she's going to be in pain eventually through her husband. So therefore, the whole idea of paying for tsar, if you have to pay for tsar now, you should pay for tsar when you're with her. Obviously, it's just being part of married to her, and you don't pay for tsar. You can't compare the two. When she's married to the guy, they're going to do it willingly, assuming he's not going to rape her again, because they'll be married. They'll probably try to have a marriage, maybe. Torah forces you to stay married. But here, the first time she was ba'onis, that's painful. So anyway, the Gemara has disproven the fact that chabata agabe karka, right? Because we see that there's no chiluk, right? Reb Shimon doesn't make a chiluk, and the Rabbanan also wouldn't make a chiluk, right? So you can't say it's because he threw her on the ground, because then we'd have to be forced to say that if he threw her on something comfortable, on a mattress or silk, a silk covering to the floor, where she wasn't in pain, she was actually pleasurable to fall to the ground, then we'd say the same thing. We would say that we should make the chiluk. Well, yeah, we don't make the chiluk. We don't make the chiluk, right? Comes a new chiddush. The reason onus pays sar is because he causes her to separate her legs. Right? If he wants to go in and penetrate her, he has to separate her legs. The vagina, she closes her legs, can't get in. Talks about a zona. It says she opens her legs to any passerby. When he seduces her also, right? Or assuming now it means a physical pain. That she opened her legs, right? So even when he seduces her and he convinces her to say yes to him, she also has to spread her legs. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rav Hua, Mashal b'mfuda l'ma'ad davar dome. What is mfuda comparable? The Adam she'omer l'chaver crush your shalivi pater. She's giving him pershus. Right? If she says, "Here, take my silk lingerie and rip it," right? So he's not chayiv to do it. The Marishan Baba Kama says, if someone says, "Take my clothes" or "Take my couch and slash it in half" or whatever, that you're giving them rishus to do that. They're not chayiv for mazikin and nizikin anymore. So he bought there. Somewhere says shali, it belongs to her. Davuan, it's her father's right to get the money from a futa for the nara. Ella Amar Rav Nachman, I can't see that for the reason. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rav Hua, Pitcho Sheven Omros Befuda and Lasar. This is very interesting. The Gemara says, I'm going to explain this more in Yom Ben Sion, but the smart ones say that a mafuta, at least for them, the smart ones say mafuta doesn't have pain. She doesn't have pain. We see that she has pain. Now the Gemara apparently is asking, I believe over here, the Gemara is asking about the physical pain. Before the Gemara is talking, I think Pisar Galayim is emotional pain. I don't think it physically causes pain to spread your legs. It's more emotional pain that she's giving up her virginity by doing that. So it's an emotionally painful experience for a woman, traumatic experience. It's not physically painful to spread your legs. But now, when she's a psula and when you break her hymen, that is physical pain. Because the Isla, a food that has physical pain. I'm really aim I don't know, his nanny. She told him. His nanny was talking about birds and the bees. She was telling him all this stuff. No, when you break the hymen, it's like pouring hot water reisha the karka on a bald head. Imagine a bald man going into a hot shower, right? It hurts in the beginning, but then it's pleasurable. Rava Amar Amar Legasar of Chisda. Rava said, the daughter of Chisda with his wife, Kiriva de Kuslisa. Right? It hurts like when a phlebotomist, they put a needle into you to take blood, so it hurts for a second, and then it doesn't feel so bad. Rava Amar Amar Li Basa Basura. I guess this is his wife. Kinam al kusha b'chinchi, when you have kind of stale bread or dry bread, it hurts your palate. And then when you swallow it, it feels good afterwards. Therefore, even though there's a point where it breaks the hymen, which is painful, but the gemar bia, where he continues to penetrate and go back and forth while he's in, so that's beneficial to her. So therefore, it's not considered tsar. So whatever pain she was in gets wiped away by the pleasure afterwards. This is basically what Tosos says on Daf Lamed Tem and Aleph, not in this Gemara, but this is basically what I think the Pshat in the Gemara is here. And I think that we'll explain more that this Sar Pisak Raglaim, what does that mean? How it's not, seemingly it's a physical pain according to the Mefarshim, but I think it's not a physical pain. I don't think it's physically painful. It's got to be an emotional pain. We'll explain that more, even with Ben Sion coming up in the next year. So my onus knows him, Yad and Fatal Chiyotze. The onus gives right away. And Fata, when he divorces her, she's not automatically his wife. He has to marry her, right? What do you mean chiyotzi? Chiyotzi normally means when he divorces her. Who says they're even married yet? When he decides, he has a decision to make. Do you want to marry her or not? If he doesn't marry her, so he has to give the knas to the father. If he does marry, he doesn't have to pay. We'll explain that more also in Ben Sion and how it's related to the previous Gemara. Tanya Nami Haki. Even if he decides he doesn't want to marry, he has to give the knas, right? And that's determined when he decides to marry or not to marry her. Bosh is embarrassing her and causing pagam mishpacha, ruining her family reputation. That he has to give right away. The Brisa continues, the onus of Avata, whether it's her or her father, either one of them decides they don't want to get married, right? The onus has to marry her as long as she wants to be married to him. If she doesn't want to be married to him, so her or her father objects to it, then they don't have to get married. Especially on Mafuta, and this applies both to Mafuta and onus. Especially on Mafuta, ksiv imoin, avia, ainli ala avia, right? It says explicitly in the pasuk if the father decides not to. So it says her father. He atzam minayin. Where is that? We know that if her father wants her to stay married, but she doesn't want to, she doesn't have to get married. It says double lashon yimayin mikol makom. Even she, ela onus bishlam ihi. How do you know she can refuse? See, velosia, right? Velosia midaita. Tiya is lashon. It's up to her. Midaita. It has to be. She goes along with it. Ela avia minolan. Her father. How do you know her father could object? Abaye says it makes sense practically because he is. The father doesn't want her to marry him. He gets rewarded for what he does. He doesn't have he rapes her because obviously maybe he wants to marry her, really likes the girl, likes how she looks, he wants to marry her, and the father objects, it can't be that the chota gets something against someone else's will. He raped her and he gets to marry her against the father's will. It must be the father gets to object. Rav Amar Kal Chomer. It's like Kal Chomer. Mama Father Shlo Avra Al Das Avia Ilvad. Right? When he seduces a woman, usually the father wouldn't want her daughter to be with him. She wanted the sex. Bilvad Bein Hiu Bein Avia Yechol Ha'akev. So in that case, it's clear from the Torah that whether her or father could object to the marriage. Onus Avra Al Das Avia Al Das Asma. Onus where it's more severe, he raped her both against the father's will and against her will. Certainly, both of them can object. Rava didn't say that original Abaye. Right? Even it's possible to say no. Maybe the father can object, but you're going to tell me chota niskar? No, he's not niskar. He has to pay a knas to the father. For that, he gets to marry her. Abaye lomar karava. Abaye say Rava mafata di imatzi ma'akiv eviyanami matzi ma'akiv. The father where she could object. Her father could also object. Onus the iu lo matzi ma'akev, right? Meaning the iu matzi ma'akev. The man has the choice whether he wants to marry, can marry her or not. So therefore, the father also could object. Onus the iu lo matzi ma'akev. He has to marry her. V'yanami lo matzi ma'akev. The father, you could theoretically think the father also can't object. That's why you have to say svara shlo yechot niskar. Tanya not idach. A different price. Abu shamru onus nosem yad kshiotzi. Who Eila alav klum. Even though we said the onus gives right away, he has to give her the knas. He has to give her the knas to the father. When he divorces her, she doesn't get a ksuva. The Gemara objects. He could divorce her. He doesn't have the option to divorce her. Ema, the Torah says, she has to marry her forever. Ema he Eila alav klum. Right? If she decides she wants to end the marriage, she asks for the divorce, so she can get out of the marriage. Right? She can't collect the ksuba in that case. He already paid the knas. Mace, if he dies, yatsa kesa knas v'ksubasa. Right? She also can't collect the ksuba because that's a knas. The knas, like it says, gemora psulos. Basically, that's the same amount that you're paying for ksuba. For a psula is the amount you pay for onus. That's basically the payment you pay for a psula. You already paid it. If he dies, she gets a ksuva mana. All right, the ksuva mana because the matayim, the 50 shkalim, which is matayim zuz, matayim dinarim, which is for the psula, he already paid. So now she's a ba'ula when he marries her, so he pays a mana. What's a machlokas? Rabbanan savri time amaita kin rabbanan ksuva keishal dikala bein avdalsia. The whole reason they're misakin. I explained there's two takanas of ksuva. We'll discuss that more in a second. In Iyun Ben Sion, but the secondary purpose of a ksuba is that they should have it. She didn't divorce her so easily. You have to pay the ksuba. Here the Torah forbids him from divorcing her, so there's no problem. She doesn't need ksuba. In fact, it is applicable over here because it does service the fact that he should not have the thought to divorce her, because if there's no ksuba, he'll nag her, he'll bother her, he'll threaten her, until she says, I want to get divorced, and therefore he'll get out of the marriage very easily, because even though he's not allowed to divorce her, if she wants to get out of the marriage, she wants to end the marriage, she has the right to say, I want to get out of the marriage. He'll threaten her and cause her pain until she says that. So therefore you need the ksuba, according to Yosef Yehuda, in order to preclude that possibility. So he won't do that, and she won't be kala bein avodah. See, that's the conclusion of today's shir. Stay tuned for discussion of mafuta, seducing her. I mean, for sure, I've been wondering, a lot of people are wondering, seducing, why are you paying a knas over? She agreed to it. Did she really agree to it or not? That's coming up. Coming your way next.